After the recent Voice of Reason scandal, many popular YouTubers shared that one of the problems that likely led to his downfall is that Alex isn't married or in seminary, despite being close to 30. While no one actually came out and said that you need to make a vocation decision by 30, that idea was definitely implied. Is this true? Let's discuss. A lot of what I find myself doing here on this YouTube channel is really just stating the obvious. So in this case, I'm going to just hit you with the headline and say, no, you do not need to know your vocation in your 20s. That is not what the church teaches. And yes, you can engage in public ministry even when you're single and discerning your vocation. Don't you remember Lila Rose and the amazing pro-life work she did when she was still single? I am old enough to remember Leah Darrow, Jason Evert, both Catholic speakers who started their very public ministries before they got married. Think about Jackie Francois and Bobby Angel. For a non-married example, there is Iron Inquisitor, who had a very successful YouTube channel and just announced that he will be joining the seminary, which is so beautiful. The list goes on, but the point is that you can be single and be in public ministry. In fact, in so many ways, it is easier to have the time to engage in public ministry, write the scripts, record the videos, be on the podcasts, write the books, do the speaking circuit, right? It's easier to do all of this when you are single and don't have the obligations that come with family life. Speaking from personal experience, some of my absolute favorite priests are those who became priests later in life. My former spiritual director and the priest who baptized my oldest daughter came to the priesthood after having a really successful career in finance. Another friend of mine and fellow doctoral student thought that he was called to marriage until he was in his mid-30s and finally realized, after much prayer and volunteering in the youth group, things like that, he realized that he was called to the priesthood. There is truly something incredible about a priest who is able to embody the role of a father for his flock, someone who has life experience, someone who has worked a real job, who has maybe even been in relationships for the intention of marriage. All of that experience is so valuable in a priest. Of course, someone who goes straight into the priesthood from college is valuable as well. There's no doubt about that. But there is also so much value in a late priesthood vocation. There is also a lot of value in a late marriage vocation. One of my best friends from college, she was literally the maid of honor in my wedding. She married a man 12 years her senior. Of course, in our mid-20s, we poked fun at them and made it sort of a joke, but honestly, he had been praying for her for years. He was a faithful Catholic, he had a successful career, and he wanted a family. But the woman that God had set apart for him needed to grow up before they could get married. They got married when she was 26 and he was 38, and I cannot tell you how much fun it's been to see their family grow. You can really tell that he is cherishing being a father in a way that maybe men who get married younger and start having kids sooner sort of take it for granted. Sometimes having to wait for something increases our gratitude and appreciation for it when we finally do receive it. Now again, there is so much beauty and value in a young marriage. I myself got married at 25 and my sister is getting married next spring and she's only 20. The most important thing about any vocation is not your age, but whether or not you are responding to God's call. Is this God's intended plan for your life? That is the question that matters. So if you are watching this and maybe you're getting older, you're pushing 30, and you felt sad or burdened because of this idea that if you haven't made your vocation decision or you want to get married but you haven't yet found your person, that maybe you feel somehow you failed or you're behind or that you've missed your call. None of that is necessarily true. And not only is this line of thinking untrue, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it imposes our human will and our human timelines onto God. Here's the reality. God is not bound by our timelines. He calls people when he wills, and sometimes that's earlier in life, and sometimes it's later. There are many saints who received their vocational clarity later in life. St. Augustine wrestled with his vocation for decades before embracing God's call. St. Elizabeth Ann Seton was a wife and mother before she became a religious sister. God's timing looked different for each of them, but his call was no less real. This is why arbitrary claims like, you need to just decide, are so harmful. They can cause unnecessary anxiety, shame, and even push people into making rushed decisions that aren't truly discerned. And discernment by definition, takes time, prayer, and openness to God's will. Something else. Vocations are not just about the priesthood, religious life, or marriage. The Catechism reminds us that love is the fundamental and innate vocation of every human being. That means your deepest vocation, whether lived out in marriage or religious life, is to love. So if you're watching this and you're 28 or 35 or 50 and you're still discerning, hear me when I say you are not late. God is patient and God is faithful, and He knows exactly when and how to call you. Now, if you feel like you know your vocation and you are ignoring it because you prefer a life of sin or what have you, that's obviously a problem, and that's not what we're discussing here. So, no, you don't need to make a vocation decision by 30. What each and every person needs to do is to stay close to Christ. You need to find a spiritual director, remain in prayer, sin no more, and trust God's timing for your life, because His timing is always perfect. What I am hoping that this video does for you is I hope it brings you peace. I hope it encourages you to remain close to God, and I hope that it reminds you to ask Him to reveal your vocation to you. God knows better than anyone your level of understanding and the best way to communicate with you in a way that you can understand. I often will say to God when I'm praying, like, if you need me to hear something, please make it abundantly clear, exceedingly obvious, right? And you can ask the same of God in prayer too. I hope you loved this video. Please drop down in the comments where you are on your vocation journey. I will be celebrating 9 years of marriage this December, and I would love to know the vocation of those listening. Bye, everyone.